There is a beautiful, suffocating monster floating on the surface of our planet's rivers that is currently holding the global supply chain hostage. We are taught to fear oil spills and plastic islands. But there is a biological explosion happening right now that stops cargo ships dead in the water. It stops 50,000-ton steel vessels in their tracks and snaps industrial propellers like they are made of brittle glass. It forms a floating mat so thick and dense that a grown man can walk across the surface of a deep river without getting wet. It is the fastest growing plant known to science, possessing a biological velocity that defies the understanding of traditional agriculture. If you leave a single plant in a pond today, in 2 weeks you will have 2, and in a month you will have an infestation. In a year, you will have a mathematical catastrophe that covers every square inch of water, sealing it off from the sun and the air. Governments around the world call it the purple plague, and they treat it as a botanical cancer that must be eradicated at any cost. Biologists call it the world's worst weed, and they spend billions of dollars annually to poison it, chop it, sink it, and burn it. But they are burning a diamond to stay warm, destroying a resource that holds the key to solving the global energy crisis. This is not just a weed. This is a floating solar panel that converts sunlight into fuel faster than any technology humans have ever invented. It is a biological battery that could power your home, cook your food, and clean your drinking water simultaneously, if we only knew how to use it. The plant is called water hyacinth, and its story begins with an act of innocent admiration that turned into a global disaster. The archive opens in New Orleans in the year 1884, at the world's industrial and cotton centennial exposition. When the Japanese delegation arrived at the World's Fair, they brought a gift from the Amazon basin that looked like a delicate orchid. It had lush, glossy green leaves filled with air, and a stunning violet flower with a yellow eye that looked like the feathers of a peacock. The American visitors were enchanted by its exotic beauty, so the organizers handed them out as souvenirs to tourists from Florida, Texas, and Louisiana. The tourists took them home and tossed them into their garden ponds, having no idea they were releasing a biological weapon into the ecosystem. They did not know that this plant had evolved in the Amazon to survive the most brutal competition on Earth, and now it had no predators. Within 10 years, the St. John's River in Florida was gone, not just clogged, but erased from the map by a green glacier of leaves. Steamboats, which were the lifeblood of the American economy, were stranded as the plant wrapped around their paddle wheels and crushed the mechanisms. It grew so fast that it trapped logs and created natural dams that caused massive floods, destroying bridges and ruining livelihoods. The panic was so absolute that in 1910, the United States Congress seriously debated a radical bill to import hippopotamuses from Africa. They were willing to release wild, 2-ton beasts into the Louisiana bayous to eat the plants rather than admit they could not control a flower. This was known as the Hippo Bill, or H.R. 23261, and it proposed turning the American South into a massive hippopotamus ranch to solve the meat crisis. The government almost chose to fill the swamps with dangerous African megafauna because they were so terrified of the exponential growth of the water hyacinth. We ultimately chose chemical warfare instead, treating the plant as an enemy combatant and spraying millions of gallons of arsenic and later, Agent Orange components. But let me tell you what is actually happening inside the bulbous, air-filled stalks that keep this plant afloat on the surface of the water. The water hyacinth is a master of photosynthesis that does not waste a single calorie of energy building a heavy trunk or deep roots. It puts 100% of its energy into leaf production and cloning, sitting on the surface and monopolizing the sunlight before it hits the water. It drops a curtain of feathery, purple-black roots into the water, which act as the most efficient filtration system found in nature. These roots are designed to scavenge nutrients from water that is almost devoid of life, making them incredibly aggressive absorption machines. While modern water treatment plants spend millions on chemical coagulants and electricity to clean sewage, the water hyacinth does it for food. It sucks up nitrogen and phosphorus from agricultural runoff, pulls human waste out of the water, and converts it into green biomass. But the true power and the true danger lies in its appetite for poison, as scientific studies have proven that water hyacinth absorbs heavy metals rapidly. It absorbs lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic faster than any machine, locking these permanent toxins away in its tissues forever. It leaves the water crystal clean, acting as nature's kidney, filtering out the sins of the industrial age from our waterways. But the industrial world does not want a kidney. It wants a profit. And it cannot figure out how to sell you a weed that grows for free. And here is the energy twist that nobody talks about. The water hyacinth is composed of high-quality cellulose and hemicellulose. When this biomass is harvested and placed in an anaerobic digester, it does not just rot, it ferments and releases methane gas. This is pure, burnable natural gas that can generate electricity without needing to drill into the earth or build a pipeline across the ocean. A single hectare of water hyacinth can produce enough biogas to generate over 70,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. That is enough to power a small village, run your generator, heat your stove, and light your home forever, completely off the grid. So here is the question that the energy lobbyists and the chemical manufacturers pray you never ask: why are we spending billions to kill it? If we have a plant that cleans polluted water, grows automatically without fertilizers, and converts into free natural gas, why poison it? The suppression of the water hyacinth is a story of infrastructure and control. Because the modern energy grid is designed to be centralized. They want to generate power at a massive coal or nuclear plant and sell it to you through a wire that they own. They cannot meter a gas that you produce in your backyard from a weed that you harvested for free from a public river. The chemical herbicide industry, a sector worth over $30 billion, relies entirely on the narrative of the invasive species to sell their products. They sell millions of gallons of glyphosate and 2,4-D to municipalities to spray the rivers, creating a cycle of destruction and profit. Look at the cycle. They spray the hyacinth. The plant dies. It sinks to the bottom, and it begins to rot. The rotting process sucks all the oxygen out of the water, creating a dead zone where fish cannot survive and biodiversity collapses. As the plants decay, they release all the nutrients they captured back into the water, fueling the next generation of weeds. It is a perfect business model for the chemical companies. Spray, sink, rot, and repeat next season, ensuring a customer for life. But knowledge is waterproof. And while the West was busy declaring war on the flower, the global South remembered how to use it. In the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, they do not see a weed, they see a harvest that can be woven into valuable furniture. They cut the long, fibrous stems, dry them in the sun, and weave them into baskets and mats that are sold all over the world. They turn a disaster into an economy, proving that the problem is not the plant, but our refusal to adapt to abundance. In the rural villages of India, they are building small-scale biogas digesters to harvest the hyacinth that clogs their canals. They shove the chopped plants into a simple tank and capture the gas to cook their meals, stopping the purchase of expensive propane. In Kenya, around Lake Victoria, the hyacinth infestation was so bad it stopped the fishing boats, and people were starving. Innovation struck when they started harvesting the plant and carbonizing it into biochar briquettes that burn longer and cleaner than wood charcoal. This is the definition of alchemy, turning a curse into a cure. and saving the forests from being cut down for fuel. But the usage goes deeper than just burning. It extends to the very soil that feeds us and the food we eat. The young shoots of the water hyacinth, the bulbous stems, and the flower clusters are edible and considered a vegetable in Southeast Asian cuisine. However, this comes with a massive life or death warning, because the water hyacinth is a hyperaccumulator of everything in the water. It is a mirror of the water it grows in. So, if you eat a hyacinth growing downstream from a battery factory, you eat lead. You cannot verify the safety of wild hyacinth with the naked eye. And you must never harvest it from stagnant, industrial water. You cannot eat it raw because it contains calcium oxalate crystals, microscopic needles that will tear up your mouth and throat. But if you grow it yourself, in a controlled pond with clean water, it transforms into a safe vegetable and a compost machine. The "you cannot" list turns into a "you can" list when you step outside the industrial narrative and take control of the resource. You can create the world's best fertilizer because the resulting soil amendment is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus pulled from the air. When you compost water hyacinth, you are essentially mining nutrients from the water and moving them to the land to grow food. You can make paper, as the fibers are long and strong, suitable for making artisanal paper and cardboard without cutting down a single tree. The suppression of the water hyacinth is the suppression of a closed-loop system that threatens the linear economy of take, make, and waste. We live in an economy that relies on scarcity, but the water hyacinth operates on an economy of aggressive, undeniable abundance. The authorities hate it because it exposes our pollution. A river choked with hyacinth is a river full of agricultural fertilizer runoff. The plant is the symptom, not the disease. It is trying to heal the water. And we are shooting the doctor, but the tide is turning. And the cost of energy is breaking the back of the working class around the world. The soil is dying from salt-based fertilizers, and the water hyacinth is waiting for the moment we realize the green glacier is a bridge. So here is what you do. You stop looking at the purple flower as a plague and start looking at it as a battery. But you must be smarter than the hippopotamus plan. You do not release this plant into the wild where it does not belong. That is ecological terrorism. Because it is too strong, too fast, and too dominant for native species to compete with. But if you have it on your land, or if you have a controlled water feature, you use it to your advantage. You construct a simple methane digester using basic plastic tanks and piping plans found online to capture the energy of the sun. You harvest the hyacinth that is choking your pond, chop it up, feed the tank, and realize you are generating heat from sunlight. If you are a gardener, you treat this plant as green manure, raking it out of the water to pile it up. You let it rot on your land, not in the water, where it breaks down rapidly and releases nutrients into your soil. It turns sand into loam and clay into rich garden beds, practically for free, replacing the need for expensive chemical fertilizers. If you are a craftsman, you harvest the stems, dry them until they are golden brown, and weave them into strong rope. You stop buying plastic rope and start using the river's gift, realizing that the fiber is tough, flexible, and completely biodegradable. And if you are brave, and you have tested your water to ensure it is free of heavy metals, you cook the young stalks. You slice them thin and stir-fry them with garlic and chili, tasting the crunch and the mild flavor of the river. You reclaim the name that the developers and chemical companies tried to tarnish, rejecting the label of the devil's weed. You call it the blue devil. You call it solar green. You call it the water battery. And you call it freedom. Every person who turns a hyacinth into a charcoal briquette is saving a tree and becoming one less customer for the charcoal industry. Every person who turns a hyacinth into biogas is one less customer for the fracking industry and the centralized power grid. Every person who composts a hyacinth is one less customer for the synthetic fertilizer cartel that is destroying our topsoil. The plant they tried to feed to hippos and spray with millions of dollars of poison is actually a powerhouse of potential. The water hyacinth is still here, still blooming in the canals, still crushing the propellers, and still waiting for us to wake up. It is telling us to slow down, telling us that nature will always outproduce industry, and telling us to close the loop. It can power your house, clean your water, and build your soil if you have the courage to reach into the water. It is beautiful. It is dangerous. It is powerful. And it is yours for the taking if you respect the rules. If this opened something for you, subscribe. Because every share helps preserve knowledge they spent a century trying to sink. Let's go deeper into the twist that modern science is just uncovering. The concept of biochar and carbon sequestration. When you burn this plant in a low-oxygen environment, you create a form of charcoal that is incredibly porous and stable. This biochar is not just fuel, it is a soil reef that stays in the ground for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. It becomes a permanent home for soil bacteria, holds water like a sponge, and locks carbon into the ground forever. Think about the irony: the water hyacinth sucks carbon dioxide out of the air to grow at record speeds. If we let it rot in the river, that carbon turns into methane and goes back into the atmosphere, heating the planet. But if we harvest it and turn it into biochar, we are scrubbing the sky and burying the carbon safely in the earth. We are taking the exhaust of the cargo ships that the hyacinth blocked, and we are using it to grow tomatoes. We are using the world's worst weed to reverse climate change. But the industry does not want you to make biochar. They want you to buy carbon credits and feel guilty about your footprint while they spray herbicides that kill the soil life. They want the problem to remain complex, so they can sell you a complex solution. But the water hyacinth is the simple solution. It is too fast for their business model and too generous for their scarcity economics. So they demonize it. There is a reason the Amazon River, the home of this plant, is not choked to death by it in the wild. In its native home, there are insects, weevils, and manatees that eat it, creating a natural balance that we destroyed. We took it out of its home and killed the predators, creating the monster, and now we must become the predator. We must become the eaters of the weed, not just with our mouths, but with our engines, our gardens, and our hearths. We have to look at the purple plague and see the purple gold, shifting our perspective from scarcity to abundance. The next time you see a waterway choked with green leaves, do not see a tragedy, see a missed opportunity. See a million BTUs of heat floating unused. See tons of free fertilizer rotting away, and see the arrogance of civilization. The flower that stops the ships is trying to tell us something about the resilience and power of the natural world. The water hyacinth doubles every 12 days. The question is, can our wisdom grow fast enough to catch up to it? It stands as a testament to the fact that you cannot fight nature and win, but you can partner with it. The archives of the past show us that we almost chose hippos over chemicals, a choice that seems absurd but was rooted in desperation. Imagine a timeline where the Mississippi Delta is a ranch for meat, fueled by the very plant we now poison. It sounds like science fiction, but it was a serious congressional debate, proving how desperate the authorities were to solve the problem. Today, we have better tools than hippos. We have digesters, we have kilns, and we have the knowledge of chemistry. We know that the cell walls of the hyacinth are easy to break down, making it the perfect feedstock for fermentation. We know that the nitrogen content makes it a superior compost activator, heating up a pile faster than almost any other green. We know that the fibers can replace plastic in packaging, reducing the island of trash in the Pacific Ocean. The potential is limitless. But it requires labor. It requires attention. And it requires a shift in how we value time. The system wants convenience. It wants you to flip a switch and pay a bill. Not harvest a weed and run a generator, but for those who value independence, for those who are preparing for a future where the grid is unreliable. This plant is gold. It is the ultimate prepper resource. A biological machine that turns waste into value without asking for a paycheck. So the next time you drive past a ditch filled with purple flowers, remember the Japanese delegation and their innocent gift. Remember the steamships trapped in the green ice. And remember the billions of dollars spent on chemical warfare. And then, remember that the power to change your own energy future might be floating right there, waiting for you. You just have to be willing to get your boots muddy and reclaim the abundance that nature is practically begging you to take. The water hyacinth is a test. It is a test of our ingenuity, our adaptability, and our willingness to work with life. Will we continue to poison the messenger, or will we finally read the message and unlock the vault of green energy? The choice is yours. But the plant is not waiting. It is doubling, growing, and expanding while we decide. It is the unstoppable force. And it is time we stopped being the immovable object and started moving with the flow. This is the secret of the swamp, the power of the plague, and the promise of the purple flower. If you are ready to see the world differently, to see resources where others see rubbish, then you are ready for this knowledge. Use it wisely. Use it safely. And never forget that the greatest solutions are often disguised as the biggest problems.